Hello and welcome to the aForm Show, the premier podcast for all things architecture and design across the MENA region. Welcome to your tribe. Today's episode is supported by SkyStruct, the groundbreaking construction and project management solution that's absolutely turning heads in the industry. They are bringing together architects, engineers, project managers, procurement, and essentially any stakeholder onto one singular platform. Yes, clients are included. SkyStruct is genuinely changing the game. Its tailored modules for construction management, inventory, labor, cost management help streamline the chaos of construction projects. They are rolling out very soon in Dubai, but you as a listener can get in early. Drop us an email at hello@aform.studio and find out how SkyStruct is the future, and it is here today. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today we are joined by Selini Bishop, founder at Chapters Marketing. Selini comes with a wide experience of portfolio work across, I want to say, the entire GCC, working with multiple brands, multiple designers, and has now started Chapters Marketing. And we're going to learn all about things marketing for designers, for brands, for studios. If you are in the AEC industry and you care about marketing in any sort of way, this is the episode for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Selini.
Thank you so much, mate. I'm buzzing. Thank you so much for having me.
Typically, I like to start these episodes with, why did you start what you started? Why did you do what you do? But I think in your case, it's relevant for a lot of our listeners to understand, who is Selini Bishop? Why is Selini Bishop?
I love it, mate. What a question. Okay, so I'll take you back to where it all started. So I was raised in a very small town called Bognor Regis. And anyone who's listening from the UK will probably know Bognor Regis, but for the wrong reasons.
All right.
So very small seaside town, south coast of England. Most people will know it for Butlins. And I don't really know actually how to explain Butlins. Almost like a leisure entertainment complex. They do lots of cool things for kids, adult weekends. Yeah, and that's where I was raised. So very small town. And yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like hindsight's a funny thing. I don't think at the time I realised like what my childhood really was, but
it seemed normal at the time.
Oh, mate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you sort of like talk to people sort of like, as you grow up and move elsewhere, and you realise, not everyone had the same childhood that I did. But mate, super grateful for where I grew up and the memories that I had, So, and yeah, definitely one way or another shaped me for sure. So yeah, that's where it all started. And then moved to London when I was about 17. Yeah, and lived there maybe for like a couple of years. And then ended up, that wasn't going too well, and ended up moving to Dubai. Yeah, my uncle, Paul Bishop, ran an interior design company, Bishop Design.
Shout out to Paul.
Mate, like what a legend. I really am beyond grateful, like beyond words grateful for that man and everything that he's taught me. Yeah, real legend. And yeah, started basically, no one knew what I was going to do. I was sort of like the niece of the owner that had sort of come into the business. And yeah, basically said, who's doing your Instagram, who's doing your Facebook? And it just went from there really. And yeah, we achieved some great things in like 4.5 years. Then went traveling in South America.
What was that like?
Dude, like it was...
That must have been like...
When we told people that we were going to South America, I don't think we realised. They were like, are you sure? Like, Are you going to be okay? Like, what are you thinking? But dude, it was such a beautiful part of the world, really. We did Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Panama, and a couple of other places as well. And just, wow. Yeah, really incredible. The people were amazing. Few sketchy moments for sure. But yeah, wow, what a journey.
I feel like coffee might have been ruined for you.
Yeah,
forever, moving forward.
When we were in Colombia, they said actually like a lot of their good stuff gets exported. So what's left is like the
not so good.
Yeah, exactly. But there were like a few coffee shops that was known to be like, no, this is the good stuff. You need to go there. And yeah, wow, amazing. But seeing all the process and stuff of how like the beans get selected and
nice.
yeah, magical. Food like was just incredible. And yeah, came back, joined Bishop Design again, and then was maybe there for another year until, do you know what, it's funny, I had no idea that I was going to start Chapters actually, and it was very sort of like in the moment, didn't really plan it. Was on the phone to my dad one night and he sort of said, like you don't really see yourself, what's up? I didn't really have an answer, but just something wasn't quite right. And next day I ended up quitting, told no one. I even got home to my partner and I messaged him like during the day, like, I need to tell you something. And he's like, I hate messages like this. Like, what do you mean?
I can't wait till the evening.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
need to
It's
know.
like that message, like, we need to talk. It's like, wait, what? So yeah, got home and he's like, is everything all right? I was like, I quit my job. He was like, what? Like literally came out of nowhere. And yeah, had no idea what I wanted to do. Just the feeling that it was time for a change, really. And yeah, that's when Chapters was born. And it's sort of never had it. I think I always knew, like growing up, that I wanted to start a business. I don't really know where that came from. Obviously, my uncle had his business in Dubai. You know, my dad had his painting and decorating business. So I was in a way surrounded by business owners. But
Right.
I guess, yeah, on a subconscious level, maybe they inspired me one way or another. Yeah, definitely didn't realize it was going to happen at that moment in my life and it was going to spiral or go the way that it would. But it was, Chapters was started really as, okay, well, I know PR and marketing, let's say. So I'll just do that until I figure out what I really want to do. And it's sort of, we've now gone from like me being a freelancer to we're a fully fledged business.
Yeah. I mean, what I like about that story is that I think most people, when they want to go down the route of, being business owners, so to speak, I suppose they can kind of get lost in the planning of it. Like, let me open my Excel sheet and this is going to be this is going to be my
all of that in the
overheads.
beginning.
And you can so easily just be caught up in that loop saying, I'm not ready yet. I don't have this figured out. I'm not ready yet. And before you know it, a decade has passed, and it never really materializes. So I'm quite inspired actually that you just sort of intuitively knew that that's what you wanted to do and just did it.
It's like you said, like you can try and plan something like to a T before it starts, but you never actually know how anything's going to go really until it starts flowing. So don't get me wrong, like that, before you start that business and you're going through like, what's the brand, what's the name, and you're choosing your color palettes, like that's the fun part. Yeah. But then obviously like as the business gets moving, it's like, oh wow, this is evolving now. And it's really not what I thought it was going to be in the beginning. But obviously you've got your foundations, you know what you want to do, you know what your values are, and that obviously carries you through.
True. And fortunately, we were talking briefly off air, Chapter's doing very well from what I can see and what I can hear. So I suppose for people who don't know what Chapters is or what is it that you do and what Chapters does, if you could give them a sort of insight into that. Of course, I mean, there's so much we could talk about, I'm sure. But for the listeners who are kind of, I would say almost all designers, what is it that Chapters does?
Absolutely. So Chapters was started as a, let's say, marketing brand. And we help obviously our clients share their stories. And that's now evolved into, we really understand the people that appreciate our services and the people that are seeking us out. And we really are, for the people in the design ecosystem, designers, architects, brands that are doing some amazing things, brands with purpose. And we help them with social media, PR, and we dabble in a little bit of branding as well. So that's really what excites us the most.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to ask a very obvious question, right? Uh-huh. And I ask this because whenever I talk to other designers about their marketing efforts, be it for awards or be it for their studio, whatever it is, right? A lot of them somehow think that there's a formula to this. And they're like, so we're just going to do these posts, we're going to write these articles, we will create a viral piece of content which will go viral and therefore give us the views we need and bingo bango, Bob's your uncle, that's marketing.
Yeah.
I want to tell them that's not really the case. But before I do, have any designers come to you and said, Selini, that's what we want? And have you had to correct them?
So it's funny. I think marketing and social media as well is, let's say, when I started in the industry, which is 8 years ago now, it was still a relatively new concept in our industry for our business, for, interior designers. And, we were potentially one of the first that sort of explored it and in the way that we did and executed it in the way that we did, at least in this market. And now it's, every designer, every company in the industry is on social media, I believe, one way or another. So you could argue to some degree that it's quite saturated, or it's more difficult to stand out, let's say. So I will always start with, what are our goals? Who are you as a business? Forget going viral, forget making sales for a minute. Social media and marketing in itself is an extension of you and your brand and your business. So I haven't actually had anyone ask me to make them go viral, but I have had people ask me before, we want social media to help us make sales. And I think if you're looking at social media solely through the lens of making sales, you're really looking at it from the wrong angle. Interior designers and architects will know a lot of our business comes through word of mouth, through relationships, through recommendations. Our industry is amazing for that. Do you know a lighting designer? Yes. Do you know an interior designer? Yes. So if we're looking at social media purely from a sales perspective, I think that's where it almost starts to become a bit of a chore. It becomes unenjoyable and it takes the purpose away from it. I always think social media should be, a playground somewhere where you can express yourself. So I would always try, and I think now our understanding of social media is changing, and a lot of companies are looking at it now as, how can we use this to, whether it's we want to create a presence that people are proud to be associated with. When people come for interviews, we want people to know who we are and what we're all about. And social media is a big part of that. People might want to build community, and social media is a big part of that. People might be going through a rebrand or, and they want to continue that noise or continue that momentum. So there's a lot of reasons why people come to social media marketing. And I think if you're looking for quick fixes, like going viral, like you said, to make a few quick sales solely, if that's your sole purpose, it really is the wrong way to look at it.
Right. Okay. Couple of questions that come to mind. I suppose the first one would be, I can see a fairly new studio or brand, obviously wanting to go down the social media route for many reasons, just because there's not a lot of experience there, so to speak, just because they're that new to the market. What happens on the other end? Let's say you are, market leader, right? In whatever your sector is, you've already been in operation 30, 40 years. Your clients know you, your competitors know you, you are top dog of your field, right? Do you also still need to be looking at marketing efforts specifically within social media?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Because like we said, there's so many different reasons why someone would want to go onto social media. And even though, like you say, the market leaders, the top dogs, even though they wouldn't be using social media necessarily for brand awareness, they could be using it for so many other things. Celebrating your team, celebrating your amazing projects, sharing your ideas with the world. And I definitely think both ends of the scale, whether you're new starting out or whether, you've been in the industry for years. And I've seen both ends of the scale as well and had the pleasure of working with people all throughout. And there's definitely a space for everyone.
Okay. And I suppose question number 2 would then be more for the individual designers who are probably listening in, who are probably thinking, hey, you know what? I have a unique point of view. I have things which I find interesting in particular, and perhaps it doesn't align with the studio that I work. And I maybe want to create my own brand through social media. For designers, I find what sort of handicaps them, right, is, we spoke about this off air, is this thing where ironically creatives are not creative on social media, so to speak. So if you could talk to the designers who are looking to maybe start a personal brand, what would you recommend as, look at this, don't look at this, don't focus on this, focus on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 2 things here that I want to bring up. So the first is, and we've been in an event together and I've said something very similar there, is what makes you stand out is your unique stories. So when it comes to this idea of, what should I be posting? What should I be talking about? It really comes down to, well, hang on a minute, stop, pause, look inside. The stories are already there. How have you got the inspiration for something? How have you got to where you are? What's inspired you for a project? I use LinkedIn a lot for sharing my reflections as a business owner. And it's these personal stories that allow us to connect with people, And even when I look at things from like a company perspective, say, for example, a company's won an award and they want to do a social media post about it, I still always look at who that company is and what their values are, what their tone of voice is. And that post or that story is always relevant to that company or person, So it's always about how can I bring in my own personal, touch to this. And then the second thing is, as designers, you're inspired by music, art, film, and that can be, the same on social media. What are fashion brands doing? What are musicians doing? There's so many amazing things. And I think we can get into the habit of looking at, what are other designers doing? I need to be doing that. And it's not the case at all. Number one, we're all on our own paths anyway. So when we start looking at other people, this is where, social media can become stressful and overwhelming because we're looking at everyone else and thinking that's what we need to be doing. But yeah, it really comes down to finding inspiration beyond, the industry. And also, I strongly believe the greatest stories are the ones that we have ourselves, So right. I would start by, it's always a good idea to get inspiration from other brands and thinking of how I can use what I've seen as inspiration, of course, but how can I use what I've seen to share my personal story?
Gotcha.
And I think to your point as well, about, if a designer is with a company and they don't share the same values or they want to build their own personal brand, I think there's a bigger question there as well of, number one, maybe that's not the right company for you in the first place, if you're sharing different values. But if it's just a case of, building a personal brand, definitely it's the stories that we share.
Yeah. And I only asked that question because I actually do have a friend who shall remain anonymous, who works for one of these very large multinational firms, right? And he's in a pretty, what you could say, almost partner type position. So he feels he's a very, very awesome person to hang out with, right? Definitely has a lot of insights, loves music, like you said.
Amazing.
Paints quite a lot and things like that, and wants to express that in a way. But then because he's almost now, on an equity level associated with this company, he sort of then thinks about, but then, because of what I say and do, does it then reflect on the company, so to speak?
Yeah, of course.
And I know that that's a hyper niche possible scenario, but there is this sort of, I find, mismatch between designers and studios, because sometimes people just want to have a bit of fun and maybe it doesn't really always align with what your studio sort of does. So interesting. Okay. All right. The next thing that I probably want to talk about is, and I know that chapters, you probably have your own secret sauce about this is what we do and this is what we think you should do. But I'm assuming every client has something bespoke and something tailored for them, or is there something that universally works for everyone?
I think it's always, people when they're reaching out to chapters, they always say, what are your packages? And we don't have packages. It's right. Everything is so unique to every company, every individual, because we've all got different goals. And that's exactly where I start. What are your goals? Not for marketing, not for social media, as a business, and how can we help you get closer to those? So across the board, social media, again, is a big part of what we do. And again, personal brands. If, say, there's a company that, a new person has joined, they might be not from this market, they might have moved from Europe or elsewhere. And, we really want to start helping them connect with people and in turn, obviously raising more awareness about the brand. It would always be, LinkedIn is a really, really great platform. And that's always something that I will consider whether that's the right move or right thing to include as part of our strategy.
Okay. And I know that, I don't want to sound like a dinosaur almost, but is there a requirement or a need for things like a website in today's world? Because many times I've heard designers talk about, especially, product designers, for example, they're always like, my Instagram is linked to my Shopify where, they can visit my store, see everything in person there. And I don't really need a website, so to speak. I can maybe understand that particular case, but for other types of creatives, interior designers, architects, do you think a website is still relevant today?
Yeah, I think so, especially because of, the companies that interior designers, architects are targeting. Obviously, SEO and websites still play a big part. And also it's the representation, or it's your portfolio. Of course, Instagram is an incredible platform, but to some degree, posts on there are quite short-lived. So you've got maybe, you send a post out or you make a post and it's probably relevant for, let's say, or it gets the most traction within the first, let's say, 2 days. And then obviously it's the next post and the next post and the next post. So obviously, when someone's scrolling through your profile, they'll come across these projects. But It's your website is really that landing page, if you will, or that foundation where, you know, you can send to clients, or that's where they'll find you. Yeah, so I would still say it's important. But it's an interesting point, because when we look at sort of like trends, or when we look at sort of like the new generations coming in, will websites be necessary in the next, let's say, 20 years? No, absolutely not. But right now, I still think they play an important part.
Gotcha. Very interesting, I must say. There's so many questions bubbling in my head. I almost have
Let's just go. We'll do like a quick fire round.
I suppose the next thing is, again, you know, with the benefit of our listeners, just trying to, you know, add value to them. If there is a designer that is looking to do, let's say, award submissions, right? Because 'tis the season, right?
Yeah.
'Tis the season. I've had a lot of designers that come to me and say, you know, we want to submit our project, but we want to create something different. We have a sort of standard way of doing our, you know, award submissions and so on.
Yeah.
But we want to do something different. Again, I know that there's no set formula, but do you think there's still a place for storytelling in even something like an award submission?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. When we do an award submission and we look at the presentations that we're putting together, it is always that case of, you know, what was the client brief, what was the idea, and how has that been carried through? So you're starting from the client brief, exactly how you would have done the project, the process, what's the mood, what was the idea, what was the concept, and we carry that through and show how that was implemented through materials. So storytelling is key to everything in our industry. It's key to interior design, you know, architecture, you know, lighting. It's such a core part of what we do. So yeah, when it comes to awards and marketing and social media, it's always about, you know, what's the story we're telling here?
Right. Okay. All right. I like to typically at this point in the episode ask for, I call it red flag and green flag.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
which in your case, I suppose would be based on what you see in the industry, right? If you could summarize and say, hey, you know what, guys, when it comes to your marketing efforts, this is a green flag. And I think we sort of touched upon what you should do. But in your opinion, what would be a red flag? What should you probably absolutely stay away from? Don't even go down that road, so to speak.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question, actually. So I think that when we sort of like look at social media calendars and, you know, sort of like becoming much more active, we can get into this habit of, okay, you know, we need to be posting a certain amount of times a week. And don't get me wrong, obviously, again, it all depends on what part of your marketing journey that you're in. But a lot of the time you can fall into the habit of creating content just for the sake of posting 3 times a week. And it's actually, when you look at the quality of those posts, they can start deteriorating because you're so focused on, I need
deadline.
to be posting 3 times a week. And it's like, who's told you that you need to be posting 3 times a week? Or is that something that is like when we talk about timelines for projects, and it's like, oh, you know, this needs to be done by this time. And it's like, well, timelines always get pushed back. Who's actually telling you that you need to be posting, or that you need to be stressing yourself out over posting 3 times a week? So I would always, a green flag is always quality. And then I'd say the red flag is, you know, quantity, let's say. So always quality over quantity. You know, a green flag is brands that express themselves and want to try something different. And I guess with designers are beautiful people, and the way that they think is just incredible. You know, the way that nothing is sort of black and white, you know, there's always something deeper going on. So, and I think that when it comes to social media, to some degree, there's, how can I put this? It moves a lot quicker than sort of, you know, like other marketing platforms, or, you know, other parts of let's say the marketing mix. So to some degree, even though I wholeheartedly agree, yes, quality over quantity, focus more on creating something with purpose. To some degree, there is still that quick element. And I think if you can spend too long stressing over one post, you have to find that balance. And sort of, I know that designers, and my uncle actually used to, when we sort of like used to look at presentations together, where sort of like very early on, things like, you know, it has to move sort of like 1 centimeter to the left, or it's not quite center and it has to align. And I remember at the time, I just used to think, like, what is this guy on about? Like, why does it matter that it has to move 1 centimeter to the left? And then I always respected it. And then I read a book, and I think his name is Greg Hoffman, ex-CMO of Nike. And he says in this book, and I read this book maybe, I want to say about a year ago, and he talks in there about obviously like advertising and that same thing again, like when you've only got sort of like a second, not even a second to capture someone's attention, the difference of 1 centimeter or even 1 millimeter makes all the difference. And I wholeheartedly agree. And I think there's definitely a space for it in marketing. But sometimes I think if you're looking for perfection on every single post, it's going to hold you back. So I guess the green flag would be, yes, look for purpose, but perfection would be the red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. Mind blown.
I mean, I think I rambled like for ages there just to get to a point. Yeah.
It's something which I personally struggled with also, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I sort of came across 2 concepts which I suppose put my mind at ease. One is, which even applies to the show. I mean, whatever kind of social media efforts we have, I have this sort of 80-20 rule.
Yes, love this.
Which is as long as the content is 80% there, release.
Yeah.
Because what I've found is, just for the purposes of numbers, right? If it takes you, say, 10 hours to go from 0 to 80% good, I've found it takes another 10 to go from 80 to 90.
So interesting.
And probably takes another 20 to go from 90 to not even 100, but like close to 100.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've found that instead of spending 40 hours trying to reach 100, I could put in 40 hours and get 4 pieces of content, which are 80% there.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather go for the 80 on 4 rather than try to get the 100 on 1.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it.
And what I've found is that, funnily enough, the more you do it, that 80 just creeps up a little bit. And you're suddenly averaging an 82 or an 84, an 85 without really realizing it. Because you subconsciously pick up, oh, I should change that the next time. I should change that the next time.
Yeah, exactly.
And it automatically goes up. So I think what I found is it's more a matter of, just like you would in the gym, just about consistently doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you do get better rather than trying to do the best thing in your very first go.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was number 1, which helps out, at least for us. And the second thing is that I'm sort of a believer of, if you're going to do social media, right, that more so than quality is actually about authenticity, right? Like you were saying about how it really doesn't, you shouldn't.
Don't lose sight of your voice. And
don't lose sight of your voice. And the minute you make it a project, that's when it becomes like boring. Yeah. But then on the flip side, I'm also a big pusher of consistency. So the hack I found around that was this concept of floors and ceilings, right? Which is again something I use in projects, wherein you determine for whatever effort you're doing that in the ideal world, I want to post 4 times a week. I want to have multiple stories. I want to be able to write an article that goes out to a magazine. Yeah. And I want to do this all in a week. That's my ideal week. The floor is I post 1 story a week. Yeah. Yeah. Right? And the minute you set that sort of framework and you play within that framework, you then don't feel like, oh, I missed this, or I did this, or I failed. And it's just maybe that week was a big submission week and you hit your flow, which is good, which means you still did what you had to.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
And then when things are chill, you can max it out all the way till you have to. Yeah. And that also kind of helps you stay on this consistency bandwagon, I feel.
Yeah. No, it's a really nice way of looking at it. And I love how you touched on, like our industry, designers, like it's such, and we were talking about this off air as well, weren't we? Like it's such a intense work hard industry. And it's always funny, like anytime we sort of like see each other at events and like the community gets together, I always feel like, when we say to each other, how are you? Like the most common thing is busy. That's the most common thing we say. And I was saying to someone the other day, I was like, I feel like all I say is just, I'm busy. I need to think of a different response, but it's so true. We are always also busy. So I think when we look at consistency, it's totally right what you're saying. Rather than looking at, okay, it's a specific number, it's okay, well, how can I, show up over a sustained period of time? How can I continue showing up? That might look different on week 1 as it does on week 2 and week 3. But, when I started Chapters, I'm so grateful that we were busy from the first sort of day that we set up. But it definitely wasn't an overnight success. I had been in the design industry for 6 or 7 years, before that. So it's this idea of showing up over a sustained period of time and being kind to yourself when oh, okay, I didn't get that social media post out last week, but there was a reason for it, you know, and I'll make sure that I come up and, you know, I deliver with purpose, you know, the next time I show up. But yeah, it's always, you know, put yourself first before your social media account.
True. I completely agree, because I used to get pretty stressed out about that. Yeah. Right.
And that's when social media becomes not enjoyable, when you're stressed about it, and when it's a task, when it's a chore.
Exactly.
And I bet you show up much better now 100%. That you're, you know, you're kind to yourself 100%. And you understand. But that comes with time, you know, that comes from you've experimented, you know what works, what doesn't. You know that potentially you can't do that, you know, every week.
Exactly.
And you raised a really good point when we were together talking at that event. You know, you've got intensity and you've got consistency. Intensity will only take you so far. It's the consistency that carries you through. So everyone, I'm sure, when they start anything, it's like when we're learning anything, when we just start doing anything, we hit it with such intensity, and then that can quickly burn out. So it's showing up over that amount of time and knowing that, you know, consistency is up and down, but it's constant.
Moving forward.
Know? Exactly. Yeah.
Very interesting. I suppose as we sort of wind down the episode, one of my final questions is, and I don't know if this is a question or maybe an observation, and I'd love to get your insights on it.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure Firas mentioned this, or I was talking to Firas about it, but regardless.
Shout out Firas.
Shout out to Firas, you know, longtime supporter of the show. He brings up the point of founder-led brand within a studio, right? Many studios now, if you think of them, you think of the director or the founder being the face of the studio, and therefore their social media direction is probably what the studio follows. So I suppose my first part is that good or bad? Part two would be, what happens when said firm becomes larger, brings on other partners and other voices into the mix? How do you kind of congeal all of that into one voice? Can that be done?
Yeah, how do you balance it? No, it's a good question. I mean, first off, whether it's good or bad, I don't think there's one specific answer to that. You know, every brand, every company is unique. So when we look at marketing, when we look at social media, it's what is the best way to share the stories of this company? Is it through the founder? Is it through the company pages? I will always say that, you know, people buy from people. And I think there's a lot of power in having, you know, a voice and a face to a brand. But we've got great opportunities now and lots of sort of tools and platforms. So, you know, for example, when it comes to LinkedIn or Instagram, you might have, you know, a company Instagram, but you could have 4, 5, 6 people from the team or from the company being active on their own personal LinkedIn. So I think there's unique or, you know, a really beautiful thing about it doesn't have to be solely one voice. There can be, you know, yes, of course, the company always speaks the same values, but I don't think we have to be so limited as to, you know, there has to be one specific person or one specific point of reference for this company. And it's like, you know, when we look at marketing efforts, you know, maybe there's a magazine opportunity that's come in, a podcast opportunity that's come in, and it doesn't always have to be this founder or this one point of reference. It can be anyone from the team who wants to speak about that certain subject. So again, it all depends on the strategy of the company, what the goals are of the company. But I think there can be many people that, you know, are put forward.
Makes sense. I suppose if you have, I think what you mentioned there was quite critical, that everyone speaks the same values of the company.
Yeah.
Then, in effect, you do have 6 to 7 people probably saying the same thing, but in their own voice, which is quite interesting. I'm excited now. I have some ideas.
Oh my God, amazing. Amazing.
Sort of as we wind down the episode now, this is typically the point where I like looking forward. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So obviously the key word, it's been a busy year for yourself and for chapters.
We need to think of a new word for busy.
We need to think of a new word.
And it'll only be me and you using it at the start. And then we'll just keep using it next year. By the end of the year, we'll know whether or not we've been successful.
Yeah, we'll check in at the next awards and be like, did you hear it?
Everyone's saying this word now.
Saying it now. Yeah, we need to think of a word. I'm energized.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
Yeah, I'm energized.
Full of energy.
Yeah,
that's a very nice way of looking at it.
True. So what I'd like to do at this point in the episode is, like I said, look forward, right? So in a nutshell, I suppose, what's next for Selini? What's next for chapters? Are there any goals that you're looking to hit? Short term, long term? Are you looking to, expand? Are you looking to, what's the plan? What are you working towards now?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for asking that question, because I think it's an important one. And it's funny, when I started in the industry, there were really no other sort of people in marketing roles. So when we had to go to awards, it was really, there was sort of like no other people in social media that I could sort of speak to or relate to. And it's funny now when we go to sort of events, you can start seeing more and more people from social media and in social media roles. And I just think that's so, so amazing. There's a few of us now that, we sort of like, we get together and, it's just really nice and really supportive. And I'm so, so happy that that's now becoming a thing. And I'm so happy that now there's almost a community. And, when I first started out in social media, I learned a lot by, like reading things online, whereas now there's so many people that we can talk to. So I think that's just a really nice thing. And I love being that sort of voice or someone that people can come to and ask for advice, not because, I'm more experienced or anything like that. It's just, look, I'm someone here that can support you. And I think in any regard, any industry, when people support people, but especially in marketing, when we support one another, obviously amazing things happen. So I'd like to be, more of a support for these sort of people coming into these social media marketing roles. Chapters is growing now as well. So I told you, I think off air, that we've gone from this, I went from a freelancer to now, we're a fully fledged business, which is crazy. And again, it wasn't ever part of the plan. So we're growing, we're hiring. So again, a big goal for me is becoming that leader, really. And what's the best way of doing that? And again, it's something so new. And I don't think there's, there's business books and podcasts, but we learn only by doing. And 100%. I'm sure I've already made, as any business owner, and as you will well know, I've made a lot of mistakes so far, but I've continued to learn, and I'm sure there's going to be many more mistakes that come as we enter sort of this new chapter, let's say chapter 2.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be many more mistakes, but I look at them, with excitement, because I know there's going to be a lot of growth that's going to come out in the next year or so. So really, really looking forward to that. And I think in general, the way that we sort of look at what we offer our clients and the sort of strategies that we do, potentially there's a few things that we want to move away from this idea of, looking at how things have always been done in our industry and thinking, is this the best way to do things anymore? And potentially how we can spin it on its head and go down different paths and explore different ideas. I think there's potentially a few things that have sort of like always been done and always sort of like standard when it comes to sort of marketing and the design industry. And I'd like to think of different ways of doing things and different ways to raise noise. So lots of exciting things coming. And I think just, like running the business, I think it's important that, I talk about sort of like months 6 to 8 were really, really tough. And this was sort of like the stage where I really burnt out. It was the first sort of time that I had the thought of, I actually don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can run this business. Is it really worth the feelings that I was having at that time? It was quite a dark time, I'll be totally honest. Really burnt out. And I'd been working, mate, like 24/7. You do when you're building a business, right? 100%. Building it from the ground up. And I wasn't taking breaks. I wasn't moving. I wasn't exercising as much as I usually would. And it was just work. Like my world was at that desk. And I think a big part or a big learning has been, and again, something that I'll sort of take with me as I move forward, is taking care of yourself, mate. Like exercise and movement is key. And also knowing that, if you take a break for 10 minutes, if you step away from that desk, like the world is not going to crumble. Do you know what I mean? Like we're not, again, I think we have to talk more about it in our industry. Is like, listen, like we're not saving lives here. Okay. We love what we do and we're so passionate about it. And that's an amazing thing. And it's so beautiful. But sometimes you have to realize that in the grand scheme of things, this one thing that you're stressed about right now is actually really small. Take a step back, take a break, take a breather, come back to it, and you'll feel so refreshed. And I think that's an important thing when we look at social media as well. And how do we stay creative? Take a step back from it, mate, and we can get so overworked and so overwhelmed, and we can so get like in our heads about things. Take a break. You've got to know when to say, I'm not doing myself or the business or projects. I'm not doing any good by staying and doing exactly what I'm doing at this moment. I'm not going to move forward if I just sit at this desk and I'm frustrated or the ideas aren't coming to me. Don't force it. Take a step back, come back to it. So I think I'd definitely like to inspire or think of ways, and I've got a few things in mind, but definitely how I can help other founders, how we can all come together and start moving and taking care of ourselves. So that's definitely a big thing. So I think when it comes to social media, there are a few things. Again, generally, I don't talk about tips and tricks. And of course, again, always back to that point of every company is different, but there are a few things that tend to do well, let's say. So definitely sort of like showing a project from site to completion. People love, and I always remind people, as designers, as architects, we see these things every day. So
but the average person does not.
Exactly. So we go to a site and we think, well, this is just our office. But when other people see that, when people not in our industry see that, or clients see that, they're like, oh, wow, that's so cool. And you take that construction site and you turn it into that, like something so beautiful. Like it really is just so amazing to see. So I think definitely looking at realizing that what you do every day is incredible and not everyone sees that. So showing more of that process, let's say, from site, whether it's you sort of like take a video and then at the point or at a certain point, you transition into the completed one. So I would always, whether it's yourself, whether it's someone on your social media team, whenever you're sort of going to site, always taking videos, always thinking, a good tip is sort of take videos from every angle of the space. And I'd always sort of go left to right, up and down, or obviously save that in one folder. And then when you go back or every time you're going back to progress, always go into those same spots. So it's easier to capture the transformation later. And I think, there's a lot of beauty in showing that process. And I think as well, showing faces or showing people behind the company always does really well. Obviously, projects are a big part of what we do, but people connect with people, like we've said. So, if you've won an award, if you guys have done, a really cool team event, if you want to shout about someone and the amazing work that they're doing, faces, seeing people always tends to do really well as well. And again, it's all about, these are just general sort of like tips and ideas. It all depends on how you execute that, will always depend on, your brand, your values. Some brands can be really playful and they celebrate that. And I think that's really, really fun when I get to work with a brand that is like, no, we want to be playful. Obviously, always still professional, but we want to be fun and we want to show that side of us. I think it's always nice when working with people that are not scared to sort of break away from the norm.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, be crazy and be loud and we want to do these crazy things, but it's like, well, do something that other people aren't doing in obviously a very tasteful, still always relevant to us way. But I think, there's a lot to be said about that, not shying away from doing things differently. And I think with every sort of post or whether it's a reel, whether it's, a photo, whether it's a carousel, I always look at, what's the deeper meaning behind this? We've spoke before about, social media is saturated now. While I think there is still a place for everyone, for sure, there is a lot of bad content out there, let's be honest. And so I would always look at, as people are scrolling, as people are spending time on these platforms, how can I really bring value? I don't just want to post something for the sake of it. I want to go deeper. Okay, it's not just a light. What is the story behind it? What's the feeling? What's the emotion? What can I give people here that maybe is beyond the ordinary, So always look at the deeper meaning behind things. How can and it's the same, isn't it, when it comes to marketing? You're not selling a product, you're selling a feeling.
True.
And that's exactly what we need to be looking at when we talk about, design and architecture on social media and marketing. What's the feeling we want to create here? This isn't just a table. This isn't just a chair. What does this actually bring to people's lives? And what's the story that got us here, So I think we can always tend to look at, what's the best social media strategy? What's the best tactic? What are the best tips and tricks? But these are all things that we're sort of doing on a daily basis, and it's about how we bring that to light or how we bring that to these platforms in the most interesting way.
True. I've never really thought of it that way, but now that you mention it, that is exactly what we are doing. We are, at the end of the day, whatever project you're working on, you are essentially selling an emotion.
Yeah, exactly.
That your end client or user, whatever it may be, would experience at that space.
Like I always love, and this is before even like I was in the industry, even from quite a young age, I always remember like being excited about going to eat at restaurants. And again, I grew up with, Google and that was something that, our parents never had. And I would always look at the photos of a restaurant before the menu. That was just something that was ingrained in me. So especially when it comes to F&B designers, it's not just a restaurant. It's a place for memories. It's a place for, going out and having a good night and being with friends. And the design is such a big part of that. So yeah, it's definitely about how we sort of bring that more to the surface and evoke emotion. This isn't just a school. This is a place where, the future leaders are getting educated. And, this is the platform to so many new ideas that are coming out. So yeah,
True.
I think there's a deeper way of looking at things. And even when it sort of comes to, let's say, like, fit out and construction, to a point, there's certain things that we think are really important and we get so ingrained, like, for example, we might think a certain texture is really important, or a certain, the square meterage is really important, or we get so honed into our way of thinking and the way that we do projects. And it's actually, well, when people step into these spaces, what's the feeling, obviously, that we want to create, and how do we then showcase that on our social media? What's the journey that we take people on?
True. Yeah, I mean, this is a topic, right, which we can really talk about indefinitely, because there's so many small, like, nuances to the thing. And what I think a lot of people miss is that, in the interest of telling your own story, everyone really does have to have a sort of unique approach to this, right? And I think what, so many things which we've mentioned during the episode, which is, what works for one might not work for the other.
Yeah, exactly.
The way that you see things is obviously the way, that no one else does. And that's what you should be celebrating. So I think if anyone, takes anything away from this, it is that there probably are a few common principles of what you should and should not do. Agreed. But a lot of it just comes down to how you want to showcase it, essentially, I would think. So...
And that when it comes to that as well, like, don't be afraid to, push yourself and think of different ways of looking at things. Like I get into the habit of looking at something, say it's a post or a video, and I always say, right, how can I make this better? How can I make this different? What's maybe something new I want to try? And this is sort of something that I carry on through our team as well, is, okay, you've done that. It looks great. What's a different way of doing something? What's a new feature that you can experiment with? Every time you do something, think of, how can I push the boundaries a little bit? How can I don't get so stuck in your box, And
True.
Like we said before, social media is a playground. Play with it, experiment. Maybe you won't get things right every time. Maybe, people can get so wrapped up in, likes, which is a whole other conversation in itself. And you might post something, it maybe doesn't get the likes that you hoped. And then, you get really sort of like brought down by it. And it's like, but it's number one, likes are, I'd probably say, it's one of the least important metrics, actually, and it all depends on our goals. How many people saw this? How many people shared it? How many people saved it and want to come back to it later? And just because someone, hasn't liked something, they might have seen it, read it and gone, oh, wow, that's really resonated. So metrics are so important, of course, but don't let them hold you back. Don't get so attached to them,
Yeah. Makes sense. On the podcast, we have a bit of a closing tradition.
Yes.
It's a bit of a fun way and a light way to end things. It's basically a question that's asked by one of our previous guests to the next guest, not knowing who the next guest is. It's sort of blind, and sometimes it's comical. Sometimes it's quite philosophical.
What's this one?
So I think we have a fairly okay question for you today. Pull it up, as it was set up by our trusty intern, I hope.
I love it.
All right. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's actually a pretty fun one. Okay, so
cool.
I'm assuming this was asked by a designer, but feel free to answer however you feel. Can you name or describe a space or building that you visited recently, which a designer may not have heard of before?
Interesting.
I'm assuming by the question they meant, a place which you probably visited, which you think any designer should visit, which probably they've not heard of or is not on the kind of, hit list of places to visit.
Yeah. The typical places. That is a really good question.
Yeah. You can take your time. There's no rush to answer this.
I know. You'll have to edit out this really long pause.
No. This is normally where we pause and like get a coffee.
Yeah. We can do that if you want.
I'm good.
Yeah. I would have to say Tomorrowland. Yeah, mate. And I don't know if it actually answers the question. It's technically not a space, but wow, mate.
It is a space.
Yeah.
It is a space.
Okay. So
yeah.
if anyone says anything,
Yeah.
you're happy with you're happy with the
fine with
answer. But dude, like if you want to go and experience something that will inspire you, that's the place to go. Like even if you go sober and you don't drink and you go just to experience that place.
Yeah.
The level of detail.
The visuals, I would think.
Mate, and it's like such a magic, it's a different world, really. And anything to do with stages, anything to like, even the drinks, everything is so just well thought out and so detailed. There was nothing that I can come back and say, oh yeah, they should have done that better. Like any sort of like festival, any sort of even potentially space that we go into, especially as designers, we're
nitpicking.
like critical eyes, right? Like, oh yeah, no, or this doesn't feel quite right, or this chair doesn't feel quite right. But there was nothing that I could have faulted from that experience.
Oh.
The lights, the colours, like I said, the detail. Again, they've looked at everything, whether it's the food, the music, the acts, and they've said, okay, yeah, this is good. How can we make it better? How can we really create something where people were just happy to be here? And that really was, you could feel like the love and the happiness put into it. Like no one would have left that place sad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was just incredible. So I think when we talk about inspiration, that really is a life-changing experience. You know, you start thinking like, oh, if we just had a little bit more of this, like in our everyday lives, do you know what I mean?
100%.
If we just had a little bit more sparkle, if we just had a little bit more fun, if we just had a little bit more dancing, like, oh mate, it's just incredible. So yeah, really. And especially as a designer, especially as a creative, if you need your creative juices flowing, mate, that is the place to go. It's incredible.
Right. I'm not going to lie. It's been on my list for...
Do it.
Especially after COVID, I was like, I got to make this happen.
Oh, yeah. And just like you're just surrounded by people and it's just the energy that people give off. It's just magical, mate. Really. Really.
All right. So potentially in the future, we might do an episode from Tomorrowland.
And they have a podcast studio there.
I'm just putting it out there.
Mate, manifest it. They have gyms, like everything that you could think of. It's just,
that's awesome.
A whole different world. And like this, even, you know, from a marketing perspective, they do it so well as in like, you know, they share, again, it's all about sharing that emotion and sharing people enjoying. And it's nothing that I think a lot of people can fall into this habit of, we just need to make a lot of noise. Whereas actually, sometimes you've sort of like got to balance it with expectations, you know, so you don't want to give off the wrong idea and, you know, have someone arrive to somewhere and it not be what they expected. Do you know what I mean? Or we've oversold it now, or we've said it's the best. And we've said like this product is the best. And actually when people get it, it's faulty, you know? Yeah. Whereas they did it in such a way that when you got there, it was just like beyond any expectations that I had before. And it is about that journey from the moment you hear about it, from the moment you see the Instagram, let's say, to the moment you buy the ticket, you know, to when you arrive and all throughout, it really is a journey. And it's, especially when it comes to marketing, I think that's really important. And even PR. Say if you're, you know, hosting an event.
There are many touch points along the way.
Exactly. Yeah. And especially like when we look at things, this is becoming more and more apparent now and people are starting to talk more about it. But say, you know, certain campaigns that we do or certain days of the year, you know, you have International Women's Day and things like that. It's, okay, these are important and these days are always important to raise awareness and have conversations. But what are we doing after?
Yeah.
And again, when it comes to social media and events, what is the journey that we're taking people on? If I host an event and then people leave, is that it? Is that the end? No. How are you going to continue the journey on social media? Are people going to see this post and that's it? No, like keep them, engaged, take them on a journey. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, how do you stay connected? Don't just post something and think, oh, that's it. Don't just go to an event and think that's it. It's always about connection and journeys, you know, with everything when it comes to PR and marketing. True.
Well, Selini, I mean, I have to say, one of our much more insightful episodes.
Do you think?
100%.
Are you serious?
100%.
Thank you.
I highly doubt that anyone listening who has now completed the episode is thinking,
Thank you, fans.
Yeah, I learned nothing new. Yeah, totally. I knew all of that before I listened to this. That's not happening. There's definitely ideas that have been sparked, people that are going to try new things, or at the very least, start having conversations about everything that they've heard in these episodes. So on behalf of our awesome team, I'd like to thank you for donating your time and coming on and sharing all these wonderful insights. It means a lot to us.
Oh, thank you, mate. It really means a lot. And yeah, I just love you to bits. And everything that you've achieved with this podcast and everything is incredible. So it's a huge honor. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And for the rest of you guys, we will catch you guys next week.
Fellow aFormer, thank you so much for your time. If this episode added any value to you, please share it with anyone who may benefit. If you want to carry on the discussion, please get in touch with us over socials. We are at aForm Show on the gram and hello@aForm.studio on email. That is at aForm Show on the gram and hello@aForm.studio on email. Until next time, stay inspired.